Okay. Inverse variation. Y varies inversely as x. So this is going to be the opposite of direct variation. So y varies inversely as x is going to imply that y equals our k, which remember is your constant of variation, divided by x. So we talk about inverse being the opposite. Well, you remember last time our equation was y equals k times x. So the inverse of that would be k divided by x. So when we're dealing with our inverse variation, we will be dividing by x. Now, how does inverse variation work? Well, as y increases, your x is going to be decreasing, or vice versa. As your y is decreasing, your x is going to be increasing. So some examples of where you guys might see inverse variation would be in like production. So the number of days to build something versus the number of people working on it. Okay, so if you've got, 3 days, it took 3 days to build something, but you had 20 people working on whatever you were building. If you only have 10 people building, it's going to take more days for that to get done. Another one that I really like is going to be the force to break a board, okay, versus how long the board is. So some of you guys that do some construction will know that if you've got a real long board, they're wobbly in the middle, somebody steps on the middle of it, it's going to break it. Versus if you have a short board, they're going to be able to hold a lot more force. And you could also, another example, I guess, would be the force it needs to break based on the thickness of the board too. Because if you have it flat versus having it stood up tall, it's going to support more weight. And then this can be solved by using the equation. Okay, now we need to check and make sure that we have this right here. So I'm going to be changing it, but some of you guys might still have the wrong one. It would be x sub 1 times y sub 1, and then x sub 2 times y sub 2 in these situations. So you do your first situation on the left, and then your second situation on the right. So again, talking about how this is different, well, when we were setting up our proportions, it would have been x sub 1 divided by y sub 1 equals x sub 2 divided by y sub 2. So now we're doing the inverse of it, which means that we are multiplying them. So let's go ahead and practice. We have up above there, it says y varies inversely of x, and that implied the situation y equals k divided by x. So we've got some situations where we're going to practice writing that equation. I'm going to go the length of a rectangle varies inversely as the width of its side. Okay, so we could say that the length of a rectangle, I just use a cursive L there, equals k divided by the width. Okay, so very similar to what we did last time. The only difference is now it's k divided by something instead of k times something. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try and do these other two examples. Okay, hopefully you had that pause. The number of days required to build a bridge varies inversely as the number of workers. So we could do your days equals k divided by your number of workers. Okay, and then again, that situation with the force needed to break a bridge varies inversely as the length of said board. Okay, so there's some examples of writing the inverse variation equation. So let's go ahead and practice that then. So we've got the diameter of a tire varies inversely as the RPMs. If a car with a 2-foot diameter has 30 RPMs, write an equation that relates the diameter of a tire to the RPMs of the same tire. So writing an equation, we're going to use that y equals k divided by x. But instead of y and x, I've got the diameter of a tire varies inversely as the RPMs. So I could have an R down underneath there. Now, this says if a car with a 2-foot diameter, so we got a 2 for the diameter, has 30 RPMs, so we've got 30 down on the bottom. So remember, when we're solving these, our goal is to find that k value there. So what is that k value going to be? So I need to get k by itself, so I can multiply both sides by 30. It's 30 over 1, so those would cancel. I've got to do the same over on this side. So that gives me 60 equals k. So my equation is just simply D equals 60 divided by R. Okay? So on your homework, they're going to have some where they ask you just to write the equation. After you write the equation, it says how many RPMs does a tire have that is 3 feet in diameter. So I know that my diameter is 3 feet, so I'm going to plug that into D from the equation I found last time, and then I've got 60 over R. Now this one does get a little bit tricky to solve. There's a couple steps that we have to do. Our issue is the R is on the bottom, and we cannot have our R on the bottom and be able to solve for it. So we need to get that R off the bottom, and we will do that by multiplying what the denominator is, R, on both sides. And that gives me a 3R equals 60. Now that I've got the R up top, I can solve it like normal. So I could divide by 3, and I find that R equals 20 RPMs. Okay, so there we go. Next, I've got an example just like that. I want you guys to pause the video and try this example on your own. Okay, hopefully you guys have that video paused. So first one, again, they're just asking us to write an equation. Okay, so let's figure out what that equation is going to be. We got the number of people that it takes to build a house is inversely proportional to how long it's going to take. They're specifically working in days, so I'm just going to use a D. So we have P equals, and it's inverse, so it's K divided by the number of days, which is 6. Okay, so this is our original equation, P equals K divided by D. So now I'm going to plug in with the information they gave me. 20 people, it's going to take them 6 days. Okay, so if I plug that in, 20 equals K divided by 6. Remember, when I'm finding the equation, I'm essentially just trying to find my K value. So I can multiply both sides by 6 to get rid of that. 6 times 20 gives me 120 for my K. Now that's not my answer, okay, but that is my K equals 120. So my equation would be P equals 120 divided by the days it takes to build. So there's your equation. And then again, along with that equation, they're going to ask you another question. So it said, hey, it took 30 people to build the house. How long is it going to take? Well, I can plug in 30 for my P, and that equals 120 divided by D. Remember, the first step for this is we have to multiply both sides by D. Get those to cancel. Okay, means I got to multiply this side times D. So I get 30D equals 120. Now I can divide by 30 on both sides, and I get that D equals 4. So it's going to take 4 days to build that house. I feel like that might be a little bit quick. Maybe I should adjust my numbers. Okay, but that's how it'll work if they ask you to write an equation. Now, just like the other one, there is a different way that you can do this. Okay, you can also work, it's just like setting up a proportion, but it is inverse. So where we had A sub 1 divided by B sub 1, now it would be A sub 1 times B sub 1. So if I haven't already fixed this, scribble that out. If I haven't already fixed that, scribble that out. So it should be A sub 1 B sub 1 equals A sub 2 B sub 2. So we're basically putting our first situation over here on the left, and then our second situation over here on the right. And that's how we have to group those together based on the situations. Okay, so let's practice one here. I've got y varies inversely as x. If x equals 9 when y equals 4, then what does x equal when y equals 6? So if you wanted to set it up with the equation, you guys absolutely could do that and figure that out. Some of you guys will just think that this is simpler. So first situation is my x equaling 9. Okay, so we'd have x sub 1 and y sub 1 equals x sub 2 and y sub 2. Okay, so my first situation, my x is a 9 and my y is a 4. Okay, what does x equal then? So now my second situation is, what does x equal when my y is 6? So what is my x going to be when my y is 6? Okay, So I'm going to multiply. I don't know why I wrote that in blue. I'm sorry, guys. That should have been in red. So I'm going to multiply 9 times 4, which gives me 36, x times 6, which gives me 6x. I need to divide both sides by 6, and I find that x would equal 6. So if my x equals 9 when my y equals 4, then when my y is a 6, my x would also be a 6. Okay? Let's try one more example. Nora and Allie are renovating a shop uptown to be their new tea stand. The number of people it takes to renovate a shop varies inversely as the time it takes to finish it. If it takes 7 people 31 days to renovate the shop, how long will it take the rest of their family, 11 total people, or how long would it take if the rest of their family, 11 total people, would help? Okay? So again, remember, we got situation 1, and situation 1 will equal situation 2. Okay, because it's inversely proportional. So situation 1 was 7 people, and it took them 31 days. Situation 2 is, hey, what if 11 people helped? How many days would it take? Okay, so again, situation 1, 7 people, it took them 31 days. What if the rest of their family helped, 11 total people? Okay, and how long would that take if 11 total people helped? So I'm going to take 7 times 31, which is 217. Because 20, 10, yep. Okay, and then I've got 11d. So now I need to divide both sides by 11. And when I do that, that gives me 19.72 days. Okay, so cuts it down a little bit more when they have more people helping. All right. And then that is it for our inverse variation problems. The next thing we're going to talk about is how to tell whether it's inverse or whether it is direct.